Hollywood, where the lights shine bright, the smiles dazzle, and the secrets could make your popcorn fly. Behind the tuxedos and tearjerker performances lie private lives, so twisted even horror films would blush. From America's beloved Christmas Kuna, who ruled his home like a dictator, to comedy legends who were nightmares off camera. This list will make you laugh, gasp, and maybe delete a few childhood heroes from your memory. Number 1. Judy Garland, Somewhere Over the Rainbow and Deep into Addiction. Judy Garland sang about dreams coming true somewhere over the rainbow. But behind the scenes, her life was more nightmare than fairy tale. While America saw her as sweet Dorothy Gale skipping down the yellow brick road, MGM saw her as a money-making machine that just needed the right mix of pills to keep moving. By age 13, Judy wasn't just learning lines. She was learning how to swallow amphetamines to stay thin and barbiturates to sleep. That's right. While most teens were stressing over algebra, Judy was juggling a chemically engineered schedule worthy of a lab rat. Also, she could look wholesome on camera. Studio execs nicknamed her the little hunchback behind closed doors and micromanaged her body like it was a franchise. Hungry? Take a pill. Tired? Take another sad smile, sweetheart. You're under contract. By 18, Judy was already a full-blown addict, but hey, she was functioning kind of until she wasn't. Her adult life became a carousel of breakdowns and miraculous comebacks, each more tragic than the last. Doctors, OMGM had plenty on payroll. Their job wasn't to heal her. It was to keep her upright long enough to finish another take. And yet somehow Judy kept performing, kept singing, kept smiling because the show must go on right. She died in 1969 at just 47 officially of a barbiturate overdose. Unofficially, she was another casualty of the Golden Age dream machine chewed up and spit out with glitter on top. So that next time you hear Over the Rainbow, remember that rainbow was propped up by pills pressure and a system that destroyed the very innocence it sold. Number 2. Rock Hudson, Hollywood's dream boy living a nightmare. In the 1950s, Rock Hudson was the ideal of tall, dark, and drop-dead gorgeous. Women swoon, men envy, and studio executives cash in on every square inch of his cleft chin. On screen, he's the perfect man. Strong jaw, soft heart, and always ready to make Doris Day fall. In real life, he lives a double life so intense it could have been a suspense thriller. Here's the kicker. Rock Hudson, Hollywood's leading man, was gay. And back then, being found out meant not just losing fans, it meant losing everything. So the studios built a fortress of lies around him. Fake dates, stage photos, even a fake marriage to his agent's secretary romantic rite. Also, Rock could continue to pretend to be the man America wanted him to be instead of who he really was. It was a farce of Truman Show proportions. Publicists tightly controlled his love life while in private. Rock could only be himself behind closed doors and whispered conversations. Even among friends, he felt paranoid. What if someone told? What if a neighbor saw something? It wasn't just a secret. It was a time bomb. And then the shocking news came. In 1985, Rock Hudson became one of the first celebrities to die of AIDS. The announcement shocked a nation that still associated the disease with the other. Suddenly, America's most eligible bachelor was also its most painful wake-up call. His death forced millions to confront their prejudices and finally acknowledge the cost of enforced silence. Tragic, yes. But Rock and death did what he couldn't do in life. Live honestly and change the world. Number 3. Bing Crosby, America's Christmas dad or holiday dictator. Every December, Bing Crosby's buttery voice rolls through American living rooms like a warm cup of cocoa, soothing, nostalgic, and full of holiday cheer. He was the guy you'd want to narrate your life. The white Christmas crooner with the twinkle in his eye and a pipe in his hand. But behind that velvety baritone, a household that looked more like a military boot camp than a Hallmark card. According to his eldest son, Gary Crosby, Dad wasn't exactly decking the halls with joy, more like decking them, period. The belt was Bing's go-to parenting tool, and family rules were so strict, the kids practically needed a permission slip to breathe. They were weighed weekly. Yes, weighed. And God help them if the scale tipped the wrong way. He wasn't the man America thought he was. Gary wrote in a memoir that read more like a horror story with carolers. The kids had to stand at attention when he entered the room and address him as sir, like a loving, jolly tyrant. And those heartwarming Christmas specials where Bing and his sons looked like the happiest family since the Brady Bunch total performance. Forget rehearsals. The real acting was happening at home. What's perhaps most chilling, Bing could flip between America's dad and household warden like he was changing costumes. Studio execs bent over backward to preserve his image, smoothing over rumors and making sure the public never saw the cracks in the Crosby snow globe. So next time White Christmas comes on, remember, behind that perfect pitch was a man whose kids didn't need mistletoe, they needed a therapist. Number 4, Charlie Chaplin, the little with a not-so-little secret. Charlie Chaplin's silent film character. The bumbling, lovable little charmed the world with his cane mustache and wide-eyed innocence. But if you thought the real Chaplin was just as sweet and harmless as his on-screen persona, Welke dramatic piano, the truth less all, more behind the bowler hat was a man with a very specific and deeply problematic type teenage girls, and not in the he dated a 19-year-old when he was 22 kind of way. We're talking 16-year-olds while he was pushing 30. His second wife, Lita Gray, was just 15 when their relationship began. 15, that's not just age gap awkward. That's a court case. Chaplin wasn't just a creep with a camera, he was a full-on predator with a director's chair and a studio backing him up. He used his fame to lure wide-eyed girls with promises of stardom, then exploited the power imbalance like it was part of the script. When Lita tried to escape the horror story, court documents revealed disturbing claims of degradation and threats to her future. But did Hollywood care? Nope. The studios helped him settle things, quietly paid off the parents, and kept their cash cow mooing. As one film historian put it, they saw his behavior as the cost of keeping a genius happy. Yikes. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, along came Joan Barry, a paternity suit and a court that ignored blood tests, proving Chaplin wasn't the father. That's how bad his reputation was. So the next time someone calls Chaplin a visionary artist, maybe remember the only thing more troubling than his legacy is how long it was protected. Number 5, Marlon Brando, Godfather on-screen ghost, dad at home. Marlon Brando. The name alone drips with drama. He changed acting forever, smoldered on screen, mumbled like a genius, and gave us Don Vito Corleone, the ultimate father figure on film. Off-screen, let's just say father of the year. He was not. Brando had at least 11 kids with various women and raised approximately none of them. He floated in and out of their lives like an Oscar statue on roller skates. One day he's brooding in Tahiti, the next. He's nowhere to be found. His parenting style could be summed up as let chaos raise them. And chaos did. His son Christian grew up surrounded by fame, money, and zero rules, a recipe for disaster with a side of therapy. In 1990, Christian shot and killed the boyfriend of his half-sister Cheyenne, claiming the guy was abusive. Christian got 10 years for manslaughter. Cheyenne, already battling mental illness, never recovered and tragically died by suicide at just 25. Meanwhile, Brando, who could cry on cue in front of a camera, seemed totally unequipped to handle actual human emotions at home. "I don't think I was much of a father," he later admitted. "You think Marlon, the man who could embody pain, rage, and tenderness on screen, couldn't even show up for his own kids? No bedtime stories, no little league games, just brooding silences and broken hearts. It's a classic Hollywood tragedy, brilliant artist, emotional vacuum, a man whose performances made the world weep while his real family lived in a never-ending Greek drama, minus the chorus and with way more therapy bills." So next time someone praises Brando's emotional depth, just remember the most powerful role he ever played was absent dad. Number 6, Jerry Lewis, America's clown prince and family's cold-blooded king. To the world, Jerry Lewis was the manic genius of comedy, the bug-eyed, rubber-faced goofball who raised billions for kids with muscular dystrophy. He made us laugh, cry, and donate every Labor Day. He wept on TV for Jerry's kids, the ultimate image of compassion. But if you were one of Jerry's actual kids, let's just say, don't expect a hug. Behind the clown mask was a man so emotionally distant, his own children described him as a dictator in a tux. Gary Lewis, his eldest son, yes, from Gary Lewis, and the Playboys summed it up perfectly. Dad was Jekyll and Hyde. At home, Jerry was all rules, no warmth. The kids had to call him Sir, behaved like they were dining with royalty, and God help you if you chewed with your mouth open. He had 6 sons with his first wife, Patty Palmer, and by all accounts, they were raised by a man more interested in maintaining his legend than building a family. He wanted respect but didn't know how to give it, said another son. Sounds less like a father and more like a bad manager. But wait, the real kicker. In the 1960s, Jerry allegedly fathered a daughter, Susan, during an affair with model Lynn Dixon. DNA backs it up, but Jerry... Total radio silence, no acknowledgement, no support, no emotional Oprah-style reunion. Susan grew up in poverty while watching her rich, famous father cry on national television for strangers. "I watched him raise billions for kids he didn't know," Susan later said while pretending I didn't exist. She reached out, he ignored her. And when he died in 2017, his final punchline, his will explicitly disinherited all 6 sons. Not a penny, not even a framed photo. So yes, Jerry Lewis made the world laugh and raised record-breaking charity funds. But when it came to his own children, the joke was painfully one-sided. Number 7. Tierney, Hollywood's goddess, brought down by one fan with a cold. Tierney was the kind of beautiful that made people forget how to speak. With her sculpted cheekbones and icy elegance, she lit up films like Laura and Leave Her to Heaven. Classic, untouchable, old Hollywood perfection. But behind those luminous eyes was a personal tragedy so cruel, so random, it feels like it was written by a sadistic screenwriter on a bad day. The villain? Not a cheating husband, not the studio system, but a fan with rubella. In 1943, while pregnant with her first child, Jean made a goodwill appearance at the Hollywood Canteen, a patriotic thing stars did to entertain Wu Padau troops. Harmless, right? Not so much. Among the autograph hunters was a woman who had knowingly broken quarantine while sick with German measles just to meet her idol. Cute story, right? Until you realize what happened next. Jean's daughter, Daria, was born blind, deaf, and severely cognitively impaired, the result of congenital rubella syndrome. For years, Jean didn't know how it happened, until that same fan cheerfully reminded her years later. "Yeah, I met you while I had rubella G, thanks." The realization hit Jean like a freight train. She didn't scream. She didn't sue. She just quietly fell apart. Depression, guilt, full-on mental collapse. While still trying to work, look glamorous, and smile for cameras, Jean was enduring brutal electroshock therapy and despair behind the scenes. Imagine filming romantic dramas while your real life feels like Shutter Island. She was eventually diagnosed with bipolar disorder, hospitalized repeatedly, and faded from the spotlight far too soon. Her daughter spent her life in specialized care. Jean rarely spoke of her, not out of shame, but because the pain was just that deep. What brought her down wasn't scandal or addiction. It was one woman's selfish decision to get an autograph while contagious. That's it. That's the plot twist, number 8. Dennis Hopper, the mad genius who made everyone fear for their lives. Dennis Hopper was the kind of actor who didn't just play crazy, he lived it. A Hollywood legend with eyes that said, "I haven't slept in 3 days," and performances that felt like controlled explosions. He gave us Easy Rider Apocalypse Now and more chaos than any studio insurance policy could cover. Working with him like riding a motorcycle through a fireworks factory, blindfolded. In the late 60s and 70s, Hopper was the poster child for artistic freedom, which in his case meant cocaine breakfasts, tequila lunches, and paranoia dinners. After Easy Rider blew up studios, handed him the keys to the kingdom. His next project, The Last Movie, turned into a Peruvian fever dream fueled by drugs, loaded weapons, and whatever Dennis thought directing meant that day. He reportedly carried guns on set and not just for props. One crew member said he'd vanish into a coffin to get into character, then emerge hours later and demand everyone reshoot scenes they just finished backwards. This wasn't directing, this was performance art meets hostage situation. By the early 80s, Hopper was guzzling half a gallon of rum, downing 28 beers and snorting 3G of cocaine a day. That's not a diet that's chemical warfare on your organs. At one point, he handcuffed wife Michelle Phillips of the Mamas and the Papas fame during an 8-day marriage, convinced she was part of a conspiracy. Romantic Hollywood eventually said, "Yeah, we're good," and blacklisted him for nearly a decade. But in a twist no one saw coming, Dennis got sober in 1983 and stayed sober. He roared back with iconic roles in Blue Velvet and Speed, proving that even nuclear meltdowns can occasionally rebuild into power plants. Still, to those who worked with him during the madness, the memory never left. You had to walk on eggshells and pray the eggs weren't wired to explode. One crew member joked, Dennis Hopper, the man, the myth, the walking time bomb that somehow diffused himself just in time. Number 9, Loretta Young, the virgin saint of Hollywood, who secretly adopted her own baby. Loretta Young was Hollywood's golden girl, the wholesome church-going actress who looked like she just stepped out of a Sunday school mural. With her soft voice, moral roles, and devout Catholicism, she practically glowed with virtue. But behind the halo was a plot twist worthy of a soap opera. She once adopted her own biological daughter to avoid scandal. Yep, you read that right. In 1935, Loretta had a not-so-immaculate affair with her married co-star Clark Gable while filming The Call of the Wild. When she found out she was pregnant, she didn't scream, faint, or hold a press conference. She vanished, disappeared like a magician's assistant. She resurfaced months later, babyless, claiming she'd been sick. Then, 19 months after giving birth in secret, she adopted her own child from an orphanage. Plot twist. The baby never left her family's care. Hollywood cover-up level expert mode. The little girl Judy grew up calling Loretta Mama but never knew the full story. And Loretta, she lived in fear of one detail. Judy had Clark Gable's ears. Like distinctively so. Allegedly, Loretta even had the girl's ears surgically altered at age 7 to reduce the resemblance. You know, just regular mom stuff. The truth didn't come out until Judy was in her 30s and confronted Loretta after hearing whispers. Only then did the actress confirm the jaw-dropping secret. But publicly, Loretta kept up the adoption fiction until her death in 2000. It's a Hollywood tale that's part tragedy, part comedy, part moral gymnastics. She didn't abandon her child. She just rewrote the narrative to protect her image in a time when being an unwed mother could end your career. Was it brave, cowardly? Both you decide. All we know is few actresses played the good girl better on screen and off. Number 10, Errol Flynn, Hollywood's swashbuckler and certified scoundrel. Errol Flynn didn't just play the charming rogue. He was the charming rogue. With his dashing grin, devil-may-care attitude and sword-swinging swagger. He was the fantasy of every 1940s moviegoer, Captain Blood Robin Hood, the guy who could leap off balconies in tights and still look manly, but behind the scenes, as Robin Hood, more hide your daughters. Flynn lived by the motto in Like Flynn, a phrase that originally meant he could charm his way past security. But soon it became Hollywood code for his success with underage girls. In 1942, he was slapped with not one but 2 statutory charges involving girls aged 16 and 17. The courtroom turned into a circus and his lawyers painted the girls as wild party chasers. Flynn was acquitted, but his reputation well within the industry, it was already trashed. Hollywood's spin machine, however, went into overdrive. Publicists worked overtime to turn Flynn into the victim of gold diggers while whispering behind closed doors that this guy had a serious schoolgirl problem. It didn't help that his autobiography titled, My Wicked, Wicked Ways, Yes, really basically confirmed that, yeah, he'd lived a life of non-stop debauchery and saw little wrong with it. Flynn's yacht, the Saraco, was notorious for parties that would make Caligula blush, packed with booze, drugs, and girls who probably should have been doing homework. And as his fame declined, so did his charm. The once sleek heartthrob became bloated, erratic, and borderline tragic. By the time he died at 50, Flynn's liver was toast, his career was dead, and his legend was forever tangled in tales of sleaze. He may have fenced his way across castles on screen, but off-screen, the real villain wasn't the Sheriff of Nottingham. It was Flynn himself. Number 11, Mary Astor, Hollywood's classy lady with a very X-rated. Mary Astor had the kind of face directors loved, and society matrons trusted, elegant, poised, and just scandalous enough to keep things interesting. On screen, she was brains and beauty in equal measure. The mysterious femme fatale in The Maltese Falcon. The woman with secrets. But no one expected that her biggest secret was a colorful, erotic diary that almost ruined her career. In 1936, during a bitter custody battle with her ex-husband, Dr. Franklin Thorpe, he threatened to unleash the nuclear option, her personal diary. Not just Dear Diary musings, this thing was practically erotica. Full names, full details, star-studded. Mary had allegedly written in vivid detail about affairs with prominent very married men, including famed playwright George S. Kaufman, and even rated her lovers like she was running a Michelin guide for the press went feral. Newspapers dubbed it the Purple Diary, and America suddenly realized that the elegant star they saw on screen had a far spicier life of it than anyone imagined. Audiences were shocked. Studio executives were horrified, and teenage boys probably tried to bribe newsboys for unedited copies. The actual diary was never entered into court. Thank you, decency laws, but the damage was done. Mary's squeaky clean, classy image took a major hit. The studios debated blacklisting her entirely. Only one thing saved her director, William Wyler, who refused to recast her in Dodsworth mid-scandal. And what did Mary do? She gave a career-best performance because nothing says I'm still a professional like out-acting a scandal. In the end, the diary was ordered destroyed by the court, though rumors say copies might still exist, probably in some dusty Hollywood attic with a padlock and a security laser. Mary later claimed the most salacious were exaggerated by the press. Maybe they were, but whether fact or fiction, one thing certain, no one kept receipts quite like Mary Astor in ink, in detail and in perfect prose. Number 12. Chevy Chase, comedy legend, workplace nightmare. Chevy Chase, a name that once meant Saturday Night Live royalty, slapstick brilliance, and sarcastic charm. From Caddyshack to National Lampoon's Vacation, he was the king of chaotic cool. The guy who could fall down a flight of stairs and still insult you midair. But behind the pratfalls and smirks was a man so universally loathed in Hollywood, you'd think he personally keyed everyone's car. Let's put it this way. If burning bridges were an Olympic sport, Chevy would have more gold than Michael Phelps. It started early on the original SNL. His ego reportedly got so inflated it needed its own dressing room. Castmates called him arrogant, competitive, and to quote several insiders, just kind of a jerk. When he returned to host in later years, things got worse. At one point, he suggested a recurring sketch where an openly gay cast member would be weighed on live TV to track his AIDS status. Yes, really. Edgy number cruel. Absolutely. His film career didn't smooth the edges. Directors and co-stars tell the same story. Verbal abuse tantrums and the kind of smug superiority that made everyone pray for Rap Day. On the set of Community, he clashed repeatedly with creator Dan Harmon, alienated most of the cast, and allegedly told Donald Glover that he was only considered funny because he's black. Glover, somehow maintaining grace, said Chase, revealed the way many people think. Chevy's defense, it's just his sense of humor. But when everyone around you stops laughing, maybe it's not the joke, maybe it's you. Even in retrospectives and reunion specials, he appears like the ghost of comedy's bitter past, isolated, defensive, and still convinced he's the smartest guy in the room, which might be true if the room were empty. Bottom line, Chevy Chase didn't just burn his bridges. He nuked them, danced on the ashes, and asked if anyone had a lighter. Number 13. Ben Stiller, Hollywood's favorite awkward guy. Unless you work for him. Ben Stiller made a career playing the lovable loser, the anxious, self-deprecating underdog who can't catch a break but somehow wins us over. Meet the parents? Zoolander night at the museum. He's the guy who trips over his own shoelaces, spills coffee on his boss, and still gets the girl. But according to those who've worked behind the camera, the real Ben isn't tripping. He's pushing people down the stairs. On screen, he's awkward. Off-screen, allegedly a perfectionist so intense, crew members say working for him feels like surviving basic training under a drill sergeant with a grudge. He's not the neurotic sweetheart fans think he is. One production coordinator spilled. He's called the Antichrist on set. And no, that's not a nickname you earned for being too nice. Reports from multiple productions describe an atmosphere ruled by icy silence, sudden outbursts, and impossible standards. Assistants were berated over lukewarm coffee. Crew members avoided eye contact like he was Medusa in New Balance sneakers. One unlucky staffer recalled working with him for 14 weeks. Not a single word from Ben until they returned 5 minutes late from lunch. The response, a screaming meltdown in front of the entire team. It was our first and last real conversation. They said it's not just the crew. Anonymous actors say Ben has a habit of controlling scenes and co-stars, especially if you're not on the A-list. The laughs stop when the cameras do one actor noted. Between takes, the mood drops 20 degrees. You can feel the tension. It's like working in a comedy inside a freezer, and yet in interviews, Ben comes off thoughtful, collaborative, and humble. The kind of guy who'd help you move apartments and bring snacks. That's the version fans know. The real question is which Ben shows up when the lights go out. Because behind every poor guy moment on screen might just be a raging perfectionist holding a clipboard and silently judging your latte foam. So there you have it. 13 stars who lit up the screen while keeping some seriously dark secrets behind the curtain, from abusive dads and diary divas to comedic tyrants and teen-chasing legends. These aren't just cautionary tales. They're proof that fame comes with a filter, and it's usually set to lie. So, next time you feel starstruck, remember behind every dazzling smile in Hollywood, there might be a belt, a lawsuit, a fake adoption, or just a really angry assistant hiding under the craft services table.